up until a few decades ago, food security debates were focused on the need for producing more food and improving its distribution. The focus was more on total calories and was mainly a way of dealing with malnutrition, specifically undernutrition. Now, when we talk about food security, it's a way to systematically think about malnutrition in all its forms. So this would include undernutrition, overnutrition, and micronutrient deficiencies. So then we also talk about food security in the context of how it happens and what can be done about it. So in this concept, we're basically focused on four main things. So food availability, food access, food utilization, and stability. And for food security to exist, all the components must be present in some form at least. So in brief, food availability is affected by food production, distribution, and exchange. Food access is affected by affordability, acceptability, allocation, and preference. And food utilization by nutritional value, the health status of people, food safety, and preparation and consumption. Stability is affected by factors like personal finance and local and regional situations. And this is why we're using a definition of food security by the FAO, which encompasses all of these factors and basically asks for us to take a systematic view of the situation. So food security exists when all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food, which meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. And while the world was doing pretty well in terms of food security, world hunger again is on the rise. So millions of children remain stunted and nearly 2 billion adults are overweight or obese. And this situation is getting worse, partly as a result of COVID and also because of continuing trends. So while our production systems have been largely successful in feeding a growing population of people, but we are pushing planetary boundaries in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, biodiversity loss, freshwater use, nutrient cycles, and we're risking irreversible environmental damage. This is why it is important to talk about food systems when we're talking about food security. And when I say food systems, I mean a system that includes all the actors and sectors involved in producing, distributing, retailing, and consuming food, all activities and institutions supporting these main activities, the factors driving these activities, and the resulting outcomes. So why are we talking about this? Because food security is one of three main outcomes of a food system. The other two are environmental sustainability and social and economic well-being. Therefore, what we really want is a sustainable food system, which is one that delivers food security and nutrition for everyone in such a way that the economic, social, and environmental basis for generating food security and nutrition for future generations are not compromised. So this is very important because we can't just talk about food security for present generations, but it is very critical for all the generations that are yet to come. So this means that we want a system where it is profitable throughout for everyone, and we know that our current systems do not do that. It has broad-based benefits for society, so thinking of social sustainability, and it has a positive or a neutral impact on the natural environment. So here we're thinking of environmental sustainability. This is the reason that we're still concerned with food security, because we need to produce more food while keeping a view of all the consequences that can come with it. And the problem is that expansion of unsustainable agriculture, and specifically unsustainable meat production and unbalanced consumption, has really increased greenhouse gas emissions, destroyed all the ecosystems, accelerated biodiversity loss, and increased the risk of virus spillovers from animals to people. So, coming naturally to the COVID-19 pandemic, the pandemic, for example, has laid bare the risks that our food systems pose for the global community, both as a contributing cause of the health crisis and as an amplifier of all of its impacts. So what it has shown is that how we produce and consume and waste food sits at the center of the climate crisis. the extinction crisis, and the expanding diet-related health crisis. And unfortunately, resilient recovery is not possible without transforming food production and consumption. But food does provide a very, very useful way to think about resilient recovery. And we have to shift our investments towards sustainable, healthy, and equitable food systems, because this is not only necessary for us now, but will be very, very vital for our generations to come. And all the evidence that we have today shows that if we want to achieve a resilient recovery from COVID-19, avoid future pandemics and all other possible shocks and stresses to our systems, and stand a chance of delivering on the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement, we must focus on food. Now, let's come towards solutions. So there are a couple of ways that we can try and achieve and head towards these transformations. So first is that people have to have access to knowledge and tools for demanding change. Now this includes all types of people. So not just change makers, but essentially all people who are affected by food. Second, we have to improve protections of natural ecosystems because our food depends on the survival of natural ecosystems, and the survival of humanity also depends on natural ecosystems. Third is regenerative food production. Fourth, and this is very, very important, we need a coordination, integration, and a coherence of policy and institutional instruments. And here again is why I've been talking about a systemic view, because this can help us identify in what realms we need to think about policy and institutional change. And finally, we have to shift investment flows away from unsustainable practices. So in conclusion, food security is and continues to be a very, very important issue for the survival of humanity. And there are ways that we can start addressing it right now.